Montana Territory. Late autumn, 1883. The train whistle faded into the distance, leaving behind a silence colder than the wind that swept across the lonely platform. Clara Ray stood stiffly, her gloved hands clutching a worn carpet bag, as the last passengers melted into town, greeted by families, embraced by friends, welcomed by merchants. But not her. No one had come. For the third time in her life, she had been promised a future, and for the third time, no one claimed her. She lowered herself onto a rough wooden bench, the humiliation pressing into her spine like a blade. From her coat pocket, she pulled a creased letter, soft from too many readings. I have a quiet home, a warm hearth, and a place for a kind soul to belong. Signed in a neat hand, Harlan Cololton. Clara's throat burned. She had clung to those words like lifelines during endless nights. But now, no wagon, no face, only silence. Across the platform, two young men whispered and laughed, not bothering to hide their grins. There she is, one jeered. The half-blood bookkeeper thought she'd marry herself a rancher. The other snorted. Savage blood don't make a bride. Clara kept her gaze down, but the words sliced through her like a whip. Her mother, taken in a raid. Her father, a cavalry officer who never returned. Raised between worlds, claimed by none. Rejected at the altar once, humiliated in private twice. And now, abandoned again. Her shoulders curled inward as tears welled, hot against the cold air. For years, she had promised herself she wouldn't cry where anyone could see. But now the tears slipped free, soaking the wrinkled letter in her lap. That was when she heard it. Tiny footsteps. A child's voice, bright, curious, unafraid. Are you hurt? Clara lifted her head. Before her stood a little girl, no older than 3, with golden curls peeking from beneath a knit cap, a wool coat far too big for her small frame. Her mittened hands swung at her sides as she studied Clara with serious eyes. Clara wiped her face quickly. No, sweetheart. I'm just a little sad. The child tilted her head. Did your daddy say no? Clara blinked, startled. No, darling. I don't have a daddy. Or a husband. Or… She stopped herself, then whispered, Nobody wants me. The girl's mittened hand reached out, brushing Clara's gloved fingers. And with the certainty only innocence could carry, she asked, softly but firmly, Can you be my mommy forever? Clara froze. Her heart stuttered. The world seemed to stop, as though the Montana wind itself had gone silent. A shadow stretched across the platform. A deep, quiet voice spoke behind them. Junie. Clara looked up quickly. A man approached, broad-shouldered, coat patched from hard winters, his dark hair streaked with dust. His face carried the weight of years, lines carved by both sun and sorrow. In one arm, he held a small sack of supplies. The other rested gently on the child's shoulder. She's got a soft heart, he murmured, his voice low. Clara rose to her feet, brushing at her skirt. No trouble. She just surprised me. The man's gaze lingered on the crumpled letter in Clara's hands. You waiting on someone? Her throat tightened. I was. But it seems I've been fooled again. He nodded once, jaw tightening as if he understood more than he would say. The girl tugged at his coat. Papa. His expression softened, only for her. Then he looked back at Clara. You've got no place to stay. She hesitated, embarrassed. No, but I'll manage. For a long moment, he studied her in silence. Then he shifted the sack in his hand and said, simply, It's cold. If you want a roof and some warm broth, you're welcome to rest a while. Clara blinked, stunned. I don't even know your name. Luke Harrison, he replied. He gestured toward the dirt path winding into the trees. It's not far. You can leave after supper, if you still want to. Clara looked down. Little Junie still held her hand, clinging with all the trust of a child who had already decided the truth. Clara's heart throbbed with hesitation, and with something else, something she had not felt in years, a flicker of warmth, like a match struck against the cold. She swallowed hard, then whispered, Thank you. And with that, Clara Ray, the bride no one had wanted, followed Luke Harrison and his daughter into the falling dusk of Montana, not knowing whether she was stepping toward refuge or into another heartbreak. She enters Luke's world, the cabin, the firelight, and the shadows of secrets waiting to be revealed. The path to Luke Harrison's cabin wound through a forest of thin pines and broken hills. The sky had dimmed to violet, the last streaks of sunlight fading behind jagged peaks. Clara walked in silence, the child's small hand curled tightly around her own. Each step echoed the same thought in her chest. Why did I follow them? By the time they reached the hollow where the cabin stood, night had nearly fallen. Smoke drifted from a narrow chimney, and the faint glow of firelight spilled from the cracks between the logs. The house was small, one room, a low porch, and walls weathered by years of storms. Yet to Clara, it looked like shelter carved out of the wilderness itself. Junie tugged at her hand. "It's warm inside," she whispered. Luke opened the door without a word. The fire roared within, throwing shadows long and deep across the wooden planks. A table, a single bed, a rocking chair, a rough cot near the hearth, sparse but clean. Clara hesitated on the threshold, her carpet bag heavy at her side. "You can hang your coat there," Luke said, nodding toward a hook. His voice carried no warmth, only plain matter-of-factness. Clara shook her head. "I won't stay long." "That's up to you," he muttered, removing his boots. "I didn't invite you here to stay forever. Just the night." Her cheeks burned, but she nodded. "I appreciate your honesty." He ladled broth into wooden bowls and set them on the table. The silence stretched, broken only by Junie's cheerful humming as she clambered into her seat. Clara sat stiffly, never removing her gloves. Luke said little. Clara said less. It was as though the fire spoke more than either of them. After supper, Clara stood, clutching her bag. "Thank you for the meal. I should go." Before she could reach the door, Junie darted forward and clung to her skirts. "No," the child cried. "You said you don't have a house. This is one." Clara knelt gently. "Sweetheart, this isn't my house." Junie's lip trembled. "It can be, just for a little." Clara looked helplessly at Luke. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "She gets attached fast," he muttered. Clara's voice softened. "Then I'll sleep in the barn. Or by the hearth. Just for tonight." Luke hesitated, then nodded. "The cot will do." Clara laid her bag near the small bed. That was when her eyes fell on a corner shelf, carved wood holding feathers, turquoise beads, and dried sage. Beside it hung a tiny beaded dress, carefully folded. Her breath caught. "She was Comanche," Clara whispered. Luke's voice came from behind her. "Kiowa, my wife. Fever took her last winter." Clara turned slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held an ache she recognized too well. "I'm sorry," she said softly. He gave no reply, only tossed another log onto the fire. Later, when Junie drifted into sleep curled near the dog, Clara wrapped herself in a thin blanket by the window. Luke sat opposite, the firelight painting hard lines across his face. "You can stay a few days," he said suddenly. His voice was low, almost reluctant. "She's calm when you're here." Clara's fingers tightened around the blanket. "That's all right. I won't ask for more." Neither spoke again, but the silence between them was no longer sharp. It was heavy, filled with things neither dared to name. Then, a sound broke it, a faint cough from the cot. Clara turned quickly. Junie shifted, her small face flushed in the firelight. Another cough, deeper this time. Clara hurried to her side, pressing a hand against the child's forehead. Heat radiated beneath her skin. Too much heat. "She has a fever," Clara whispered, alarm threading through her voice. Luke was at her side instantly, panic flashing in his eyes. His strong hands shook as he touched his daughter's cheek. "She was fine this morning. Just a sniffle. Now she's burning." Clara's mind raced. She had seen sickness like this before. Memories of her father's teachings, roots, leaves, poultices, flooded her. She looked up at Luke, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. "She won't last the trip to town. Not tonight. But I can help her." Luke's jaw clenched. His eyes bore into hers, filled with fear and doubt. "Can you?" Clara swallowed. "I must." And as she began gathering herbs from her satchel, Luke Harrison, the man who had trusted no one for years, could only watch in silence, his daughter trembling between life and death. Junie's illness has begun. Clara must prove if her love and her heritage can save the child. Junie's small body shivered beneath the quilt, her breath shallow, her forehead burning. Luke hovered close, his large hands trembling as he pressed a damp cloth to her skin. His face, usually stern, unshakable, now cracked with helplessness. "She's all I have," he whispered hoarsely. Clara's heart tightened. She knelt by the fire, mixing herbs into boiling water, her fingers moving with quiet certainty. "She needs to sweat it out," she said softly. "If the fever breaks before morning, she'll live." Luke glanced at her, eyes sharp with desperate hope. "You've done this before?" Clara nodded. "Twice. Where I grew up, no doctors came for us. We had only what we learned and what we carried in our hands." Her calmness steadied the room. She pressed a poultice to Junie's chest, coaxed bitter tea past her lips, wiped her damp curls with gentle care. All the while, Luke sat rigid, watching as though afraid to breathe. Hours passed. The fire crackled low. Clara whispered lullabies in a language Luke didn't know. At last, near midnight, Junie stirred. Her tiny hand reached blindly, gripping Clara's fingers. "Mommy," she murmured, drifting back into sleep. Clara froze, eyes wide. She looked at Luke, startled. His face was unreadable, but his voice, low and rough, broke the silence. "She knows what feels safe." The words lingered like an ember glowing in the dark. By dawn, Junie's fever broke. Her cheeks flushed pink, her breathing steadier. Clara slumped against the hearth, exhausted but relieved. When she awoke hours later, a cup of coffee waited on the table, freshly poured by Luke. He said nothing, but the gesture spoke more than words. That evening, they sat on the porch in the cool twilight. For the first time, Luke's voice softened into memory. "My wife, her name was Wina. Comanche. She saved me once, long ago. But when the town found out, they said she'd cursed my bloodline. They took her from me." His jaw clenched. "I buried her beneath a cedar tree. Since then, I chose survival, not love." Clara's eyes brimmed, her own scars opening. "I understand. I was left at the altar 3 times. Always for the same reason, my blood. Too savage for one world, too soft for the other." The porch fell into silence, heavy with unspoken grief. Yet in that quiet, something fragile stirred between them. Not love, not yet, but the raw recognition of 2 broken souls who had lived too long unwanted. But peace never lasted. The next afternoon, Clara hung laundry outside when she noticed it. Silence. Too much silence. Her chest tightened. "Junie?" she called. No answer. The gate stood open. Panic seized her. She ran across the frozen field, boots pounding. By the stream, she found small footprints, and then a ribbon tangled in a bush. "Junie!" A scream split the air. Clara's eyes flew to the water. Junie flailed in the icy current, her small hands grasping at a branch, slipping. Without thought, Clara tore off her shawl and plunged into the stream. The water stabbed like knives, stealing her breath. She forced herself forward, mud anchoring her boots as she reached for the child. "I've got you, sweetheart. Hold on." Her fingers closed around Junie's arm. With a desperate heave, she pushed the child onto a half-submerged rock. "Stay here. Hold tight." But in the chaos, Clara's foot lodged between 2 underwater stones. The current pulled, cold biting into her bones. She struggled, kicked, clawed, but pain shot through her ankle and her strength drained. Junie sobbed on the rock, reaching toward her. "Don't let go." Clara's arms burned, her chest screamed for air. The last thing she saw was the child's terrified face before the world blurred into darkness. At that moment, Luke came running, following the trail of screams. His heart thundered as he saw them, his daughter crying on the rock, Clara's body limp in the water. "No!" He plunged into the current, arms burning, fear ripping through him. He caught Clara first, dragging her against his chest, then lifted Junie into his other arm. "I've got you," he gasped, voice breaking. "I've got you both." On the bank, he laid Clara down, wrapping her in his coat, his hands trembling as he pressed against her chilled skin. "Stay with me, Clara. Please, don't leave me." Clara lies unconscious in Luke's arms, her sacrifice sealing her place in Junie's heart. But will it cost her own life? Clara's lashes fluttered open to the dim glow of firelight. Her body trembled, wrapped in every blanket Luke could find. Junie sat curled against her side, small fingers clinging tight. "You're safe," Luke whispered, voice raw. "Because of you, she's safe too." Clara's lips parted, weak but steady. "I couldn't let her go." Luke's hand trembled as it brushed her damp hair from her face. "You nearly died. Don't ever leave again. Clara, please." Her eyes softened, meeting his. "I wasn't planning to." For the first time, Luke didn't see a stranger or a mistake. He saw a woman who had chosen them, not from pity, but from love. Days passed. Junie's laughter returned, chasing shadows from the cabin. Luke grew quieter, but his gaze lingered longer, softer. One evening, on the porch beneath drifting snow, he finally spoke. "I don't have silver rings or promises written in fancy words, but I have this place, this fire, and her." His voice caught. "And I want to have you too, if you'll stay." Clara reached for his rough hand, tears bright in her eyes. "I don't want just a roof. I want a family, and I choose you, Luke." At that moment, Junie ran out barefoot, arms wide. "My mommy and papa," she shouted, spinning in the snow. Luke lifted her high, Clara's arms wrapping around them both. Beneath the falling flakes, 3 broken souls stood whole at last. Not because the world had chosen them, but because they had chosen each other. And for Clara Ray, once the unwanted bride, it was the first time in her life she truly felt home.